there is no room for any deviation from our central objective of the year, which is to halve inflation so that we deal with the anger, for example, of public sector workers who are seeing their pay eroded. We deal with the pressure that pensioners are seeing when they're doing their weekly shop, the pressure on businesses, worried sometimes about their viability. This has to be our central mission. And that's why the Prime Minister has nailed his colours to the mast and said we are going to halve inflation over the next year.
Ian standing by for us in the city this morning. Ian King live at 10 o'clock this morning, of course. Thoughts from those inflation figures, Ian? Good morning.
Hello, Kay. Well, I mean, I guess you could say it's encouraging that inflation has fallen for a consecutive second month. Remember, it was at 11.1% in October. But really, that's as far as the good news goes. Don't forget, inflation is still more than 5 times the Bank of England's target rate of 2%. There's the trajectory, as you can see there. So it's just coming off the peak there. I think the real disappointing element in the numbers today is that core inflation, which is the element that strips out volatile elements such as food, drink, alcohol and tobacco. Well, that was unchanged at 6.3%, which was marginally higher than anticipated. Most of the decline that we've seen today was actually because motor fuel prices fell in the inflation basket. The 6th consecutive month, actually, that petrol and diesel prices have fallen. What's really doing the damage to that top-line inflation number is food inflation, which during the month of December was at a 45-year high of some 16.9%. That is largely due to components such as milk, eggs and cheese, which have been driven higher by animal feed prices, for example, fertiliser prices and, of course, elevated fuel prices, which continues to have a knock-on effect in the food supply chain. So there's not a lot to write home about here, if one's honest. There was another exacerbating factor on food prices. I should say sugar and confectionery prices were somewhat higher than usual, and that's because of export controls in India, where there are also failures in some harvests. It just shows you what a globalised world in which we live. So can one say that inflation has peaked? Probably you can, but that's as good as it gets. It's worth pointing out that inflation remains higher than it is in other countries. United States, their December inflation number was 6.5%. In Germany, it's still relatively elevated, but down to 9.6% there. So there is a sort of stickier element to inflation in this country. The bigger implication, I think, is that the Bank of England will almost certainly raise interest rates again next month. The Monetary Policy Committee meets on the 7th of February on top of the very strong wages growth figures yesterday, nominal wages growth that we saw yesterday. I think this will probably tip the balance in favour of another rate rise. The market is assuming we'll get another half point, which will take bank rate from 3.5% to 4%, Kay.